forgive me if this is an astonishingly naive question, but I mean, you know the area there and the situation far better than I do.
Well, the international consensus is that Jerusalem hasn't been settled yet. It needs to be settled in negotiations. And that's according to Resolution 242 of the UN. So the U.S. would basically void a resolution which declares that Israel's occupation of East Jerusalem is illegal under international law by making that statement that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. The Supreme Court just struck down an attempt by pro-Israel forces to declare Jerusalem the capital of Israel. So there are all these elements in play. No, it's not a semantic argument. It's about international law. But the fact is that the two-state solution has already been destroyed. I mean, the settlements surrounding East Jerusalem, these are cities at this point. Mali Adumim is basically a city, and it completely separates East Jerusalem from the Palestinian West Bank, along with the massive separation wall, which is not coming down until there is a binational state. And it's also not a border. It's simply a means of demographic control to preserve Israel's ethnic imperatives, which is to keep all areas under full Israeli control, 70% Jewish. And so that's what this is about. And, you know, this is the product of a bipartisan consensus in Washington, and David Friedman represents the far right edge of it. I mean, you mentioned, you know, his accommodation with figures like Stephen Bannon, who said that through Breitbart, the online magazine that he served as editor-in-chief of, that he provided a platform for the alt-right being the artisanally handcrafted neo-Nazis of the millennial generation. And of course Friedman's able to accommodate with someone like Bannon or with actual anti-Semites, because if you listen to an actual anti-Semite like Richard Spencer, the white nationalist who coined the phrase alt-right, he has said in no uncertain terms, what we want in the United States is an Israel for white people, an ethnically pure state for white people.
So he's calling for basically apartheid here in the United States, and he's acknowledging that Israel, in his mind, is an apartheid state.
Yeah. He's like, Israel's an apartheid state, and we like that, and we want that. And what's more, Israel can work. Once the Jews are moved out of the ethnically pure white Christian state that Richard Spencer would like to create, they can go to Israel. And that's the way that, you know, Israel has functioned. You know, the Zionist movement has actively cooperated and collaborated with anti-Semites since its inception.
It's been probably a decade since I've been in Israel. I used to spend a fair amount of time there, but the last several times I was there was a healthy debate going on in the Israeli press, in particular, and among you know, Israelis that I know, about whether the settlement should be expanded, whether they should be torn down, whether there's been a terrible policy decision. Has that debate evaporated in Israel?
Well, the debate gets settled at the polls. Netanyahu wins the debate by being the longest-serving Israeli prime minister.
He pulled together a coalition, though. I mean, he never got a majority vote.
His coalition is substantially to the right of him. I mean, you're talking about figures like Naftali Bennett, who favors a binational apartheid state, very open about that, and completely ending the concept of Palestinian nationality. You're talking about figures like Miri Regev, who have said that non-Jewish African refugees in Israel are a cancer. You're talking about figures like Sipi Hotoveli, who is in Bennett's party and is the second and leading diplomat in Israel. I mean, you just go down the line. The Israeli police just honored someone, they just honored one of the leading anti-African activists in Tel Aviv, who has declared openly, I'm a racist and I'm proud to be a racist, has led actual pogroms in Tel Aviv against African refugees. I mean, the whole idea of Israel's peace camp has been completely shattered, and it mostly exists outside of Israel at this point, within this delusional liberal Zionist movement that's still living out this fantasy of a two-state solution, which has been shattered.
This is profoundly tragic. I want to get into where do we go with, you know, where does it all go and all that sort of thing in just a second. More with Max Blumenthal right after this break. Tragic. I want to get into where do we go with, you know, where does it all go and all that sort of thing in just a second. More with Max Blumenthal right after this break.
Tunisia has changed. write these last words in hopes this one quite different.
Laid out a rather, bleak characterization of the situation in Israel right now. If you were the prime minister of Israel, or if you had the ability to, if you were God, what would you do? How would you solve this problem?
Well, I don't think I can be prime minister of Israel because I'm likely to get banned the next time I enter, considering.
I understand that, but
They're right now trying to deport my friend Anthony Lowenstein, who's an accredited journalist from Australia who's Jewish, because he asked a critical question of an Israeli minister at a press conference. So that's the Israel we see today. Zionism has moved very much into the realm of fascism, authoritarianism, and it's time to abandon this failed project, which was conceived during the high period of European romanticism. It's absolutely out of place in a modern democratic world. I don't know how any American who considers himself liberal can support it. And so I just don't think that we can move forward without first abandoning the concept of Zionism, the ideology of Zionism, which requires an ethnically pure Jewish state. It doesn't mean that Jews have to leave. I don't see why it means that, but it does mean that they have to live within the region, and the region has never been in worse shape. And so part of Israel's strategic deterrence at this point is to exploit crises like Syria to tell the outside world, stop putting pressure on us when everyone around us is destabilized.
Yeah.